This video is going to look at doing isometric lettering that's quite complicated. So you can see that, first of all, like always, think about what it's going to look like when it's simple. It's front view, not on an angle at all. I've used, again, like the other video, if you watched that, I've used grid paper that just shows me nice simple squares, and I've determined what my block letters are going to be. So if you've got an S or an A or a W or something complicated like that, this video hopefully will help you. My S is a rectangle that fits into like 3 wide by 5 high. So does my A, 3 wide by 5 high. Obviously my W is wider, and I've determined that I'll go 5 wide by 5. So that's actually a square. So this rectangle, first of all, is drawn here on my angle. Underneath the paper, this is a different grid. It's isometric grid. Make sure you've got the grid running the right way so that I've got 30 degrees on the angle this way and 30 degrees that way. I've drawn my guidelines to show me where the bottom of the lettering will go, where the top of the lettering will go, and I've simply just counted the squares. So this one, 5 squares high, 5 squares, 5 squares, and I've just literally counted the squares, and I've put my angle line as a guideline for the top and the bottom. Now this rectangle is going to be where my S fits, 3 wide, high by 5 squares. This one is the same. This one, remember, was 5 by 5, so I've counted 5 by 5, and that is where my W is going to go. Now my S is pretty simple. You can go down vertically, and don't stress too much about the exact proportions, but use the grid guideline to make sure it's parallel. You may not actually be able to trace exactly. I'm going to go about a square wide for my S, and I'm blocking in the front of my S. So it looks something like this. Maybe a little bit narrow here, but it's still isometric. So if yours is a little bit out like that, don't worry about it too much, as long as you've got the angles right. Please remember, it has to be parallel all the way. So there's my S. Let's do the fronts first, because they're quite complicated. With this one, the A has a point. My design has a point, yours may not, but this one has a point, and it's going to be in the center of my 3 squares wide. So you can find 1.5 and put like a little reference point. You know that the bottom is going to be in the corner, and the bottom is going to be in the corner here, and then you can either rule or draw it freehand, and basically you're joining the dots. You're not following the grid for these types of angle lines, except to give you some halfway marks and reference points. Okay, now this one is about 1.5 squares wide, so you can count your 1.5 squares wide, and then I suggest you think this is parallel, so my leg here has to be parallel. This one's going this way, so somewhere in here it's going to go this way. Make sure they're parallel, and your base is obviously right on there. Now these lines, if I go put a parallel line, a vertical line, they should be in line, and my little triangle is also going to be in line with that vertical guideline. That is going to be on the 30-degree line, and then join the dots for that. So that's the front of my A. Same principle applies for my W. I've decided that halfway, do the maths, 2.5 is half of 5. So if you find the 2.5 spot and then draw a guideline, that's a really good start. And you can notice that my point, my top of that V shape, upside down V, or the point is going to be right on this guideline. So there you already have a reference point. Now my bottom part of my W is going to be in the middle of my 2.5. So estimate it. The center point of that is going to be about here and here. Somewhere along this point is where this high bit has to be. So make sure you end up with the point of it on that line. and then join the dots to the top corner. So you know the top of my W is here, the other top is over there. Just join the dots, use a ruler maybe, or you can draw it freehand. Join the dots like that. So you can see basics are in. This part, remember the horizontal here changes to an angled line here. This is going to be on this angle as well. Now, parallel. The fronts have to be parallel. So this is on a strange angle. I don't know what the angle is. Go on the same angle. Estimate. This one's on an angle. Go on the same angle. Same with this. I've estimated a little bit. That's fine. Now, wherever they end should be on the 30 degrees. Okay? So mine's actually a bit lower, so I'll just go a little bit lower for the sake of keeping them consistent, something like that. And if I draw a 30-degree guideline, it's parallel to this, parallel to that, and this is obviously on the same angle. That's where I'm going to determine this one to stop and this one to stop. And then somewhere here on this guideline that I put for this one is where the point of my other little part of my W is going to sit. Remember, the points all end up on this guideline. Here's a point here, here's a point here. Same thing here. Here's my guideline and here's my points. So it is on an angle. Hopefully that's helpful. Then the depth lines, if you need to keep watching, you can, but if you've got the gist of it, that might be just enough for you to get going. I'm going to now put the depth lines in of all my corners. It's probably easier to do one letter at a time. So let's concentrate on the S. I'm just going to go 2 squares deep this time. So from every corner, don't forget these little ones. Oops, that was a mistake. Sorry, when it goes through the front, don't draw it. Here's one here, here's one here. And then this is 30 degrees to the right, so the depth has to be 30 degrees to the right. Let's rub out the guidelines so you don't get confused. This one's vertical on my front, so this one has to be vertical on my back depth part of the letter. This is vertical, this is vertical. Okay, this one here, 30 degrees to the right, so the back has to be 30 degrees to the right. Okay, just neaten that bit up. There's my S totally completed. My A, let's erase my guidelines so you can see it a little bit clearer. Don't forget, this one's going to have a little line parallel to your grid. This one's going to have a line parallel to your grid. And then the big one at the back, whoops, the big one at the back has to be parallel to this angle. I don't know what the angle is. I'm just going to estimate the angle there. If you need to, you can get your ruler and then just line it up with the angle and try and keep it straight and transfer it to the back and then draw it that way. That might be a little trick to help you as well. Rub out the guidelines. Hopefully you can see the A now all completed. Let's take the ones that aren't meant to be there. The guidelines again, we'll take them out so you don't get confused. We've got angled lines, follow the grid. I don't know exactly how far back they are, so I'm just making them too long. That one goes into there. Now, hopefully you can kind of see the W and the front. If you need to, darken the front. This is 30 degrees to the right. The depth line needs to be 30 degrees to the right. Now I know that is on the same level as that one, so I know I can follow the grid and that one is going to be chopped off there. This one is on a strange angle. I don't know what it is, so I can either get the ruler like this and just draw it in here. Okay, this one here is on a strange angle. Maybe I'll put the ruler on this side. I don't know how many degrees it is. Just move the ruler across and make sure the back is parallel. Hopefully you can see the W. Erase all the guidelines and then you can see your isometric lettering is fantastic, I hope. Enjoy.